NBC 10 at Issue starts now.
Good morning and welcome to NBC 10 at Issue. I'm NBC 10's Erin Coleman. We begin with Decision 2020. The national election is still several months away, but recent polls now put the president behind his rival, Democrat Joe Biden. A recent NBC Wall Street Journal poll has the president trailing Biden by 7 points. However, the president's approval rating remains steady, most recently at 45%, virtually unchanged since the beginning of his term.
With me now, Dan Eberhart. He is a longtime GOP donor and a supporter of President Trump. He's also the CEO of Canary LLC, an oil field services company. Also joining us today, we've got Mo Vela. He is a former senior advisor to Joe Biden. He also worked for former President Barack Obama as the director of administration and as a senior advisor on Hispanic affairs for former Vice President Al Gore. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, so as we mentioned, the national polls now have Donald Trump trailing Joe Biden, but the election is still months away. Talk about the impact that the polls have right now, because we've got a ways to go till November.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to be clear about polls. I'm not a big fan of polls because they're merely screenshots of a specific period of time. However, where I do put some validity to polls is when you see a consistent pattern over, 30, 45 days of time, which is what we're seeing now. Donald Trump has been behind Joe Biden now consistently for a long period of time, indicating to me a very clear sign that the majority of Americans are sick and tired of the hatred and division and racism. They're ready to move on to what we could all believe are American values: decency, inclusion, and kindness and empathy. So I think they're very consistent. There's a pattern, and it's very clear in my opinion.
So I if I could jump in, I agree with what Mo said about polls. I think that what really matters, I think the state polls are more important than national polls. And I think polling at a time right now, a lot of people are focused on their families, their jobs, their communities, their income level, and all that kind of stuff. But I think that, we've got to look to the fact that, Trump was behind in the polls last time and still won. I think Trump can lose a national election by 1 or 2 points and still win the Electoral College. And I think the longer there's chaos in the country and the longer there's this kind of unsettlement and division, the more that Trump's base is excited about him. And so we've got a base election and turnout, and that didn't really work out that well for Democrats last cycle.
We welcome that this time, Dan, because everybody knows that your base is in the 30-something percentile. That's not enough to win this time. And not only that, by the way, I disagree with you wholeheartedly and respectfully. Chaos is completely and directly correlated to your candidate, Donald Trump. He is the reason we have chaos. I sat on the White House Emergency Preparedness Council. Unlike most people, I can tell you detail by detail where your candidate, this president, failed our nation by not preparing and planning properly for this virus to mitigate its spread. This chaos is directly attributed to him. You want to keep chaos? You think it's helping you? I promise you, you will lose this election the longer this chaos exists.
I don't think chaos is helping anyone, but I think
it's not helping your candidate.
I think politicians talk about unity, but I think that's not how they win elections. I think that some contrast and some record of accomplishments are really going to boost Trump in the end. And I think that people understand. I didn't see this virus coming 3 months ago. I'm pretty sure you probably didn't either. And I think it's really hard to be specifically prepared for a specific disaster.
Wow.
I think Trump has done a good job in leadership and a good job in trying to get this economy back on a sound footing.
You didn't see this virus coming 3 months ago? The whole world saw this virus coming 3 months ago. Where were you, sir? Where was your candidate? He was golfing, Dan. That's the answer.
No,
he was golfing and holding political rally while people were dying.
In February, this seemed much more localized to China.
Trump, I remember that was when the miracle was supposed to happen, right? That's when your candidate said a miracle was going to happen.
Let me jump in here and talk about.
I don't know what America was going to happen means.
A miracle. Your candidate said a miracle was going to happen. That the 15 people who had the virus were just miraculous. Do you remember that? That was your candidate who said that. We have
I don't remember that specific line. What I do
110,000 Americans
remember,
dead. That's our moms
what I
and
do
dads,
remember is Trump
grandparents.
providing aggressive force
Own it.
leadership.
Own it.
And
Our
I
guy
believe
was
in
coughing
Trump
while
to run
people
the
were getting the
country,
virus.
run the country well.
Own
Let's
it.
get back on,
Own
let's
it.
get back on track here and talk about what each of these candidates needs to do now. How does Biden capitalize on these numbers? Dan, what does the president need to do now?
The vice president is doing an excellent job.
Needs to do now is he needs to lead on bringing the economy back, and he needs to be a unifier in chief, and he needs to move to the center and show people that he's a strong leader, that he hears everyone, but is governing from the right, and that there's a path to a better America down the road with a second Trump term.
And that is, and by the way, I want to ask you, Dan, is that done by holding your first political rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma on Juneteenth, where there were black folks killed and murdered, and your candidate's going to hold his first political rally in a city on a day that is sacred to African Americans? You're promoting division, racism, and hatred, my friend. And if that's okay,
I respectfully disagree. I don't
let us know. No, tell the people of Philadelphia right now.
Trump is out there. Trump is getting out there into America, and he is going before different people, trying to say his vision for the country and where he wants to continue to lead the country.
Yeah, that vision
I don't buy into what you said at all about.
Of course you don't.
He's doing it, why he's doing it.
You're enabling it. That's why.
Division. I think that the left is trying to foment division and foment derision right now and divide the country, because the Democrats think they can win by dividing, not by.
No, Dan.
Joe Biden isn't leading.
Dan, if you can support all your candidates' tweets, go for it.
The president has been criticized for not unifying the country. We've got the coronavirus, we've got protests, we've got a lot going on. And in Trump's own words, he did say, that we need law and order. Do you think that is backfiring at this point?
I don't think it's backfiring at all. I think we need law and order, and we need a president to act like a unifier in chief and a healer in chief. I think we need both of those things. But the more the left tries to tie Joe Biden to this, defund the police movement and, supporting the rioters in addition to just the protesters, and in this stoking these racial tensions, the more that I think that Joe Biden's base and Joe Biden's centrist support is weakening. And I really think we're going to see that play out throughout this campaign.
Dan, that is laughable. Dan, I'm embarrassed for you. We should just put up a poll, and the polls all say the same thing, and you are just absolutely laughable. How could you say that the vice president's face is dwindling?
Last time, the liberals in the media both thought Hillary Clinton was a shoo-in.
Dan,
it's not laughable, but
listen,
President
Donald Trump, Clinton's not in this election. You can try and deflect and distract, because that's all you guys know how to do. The question was,
all we know how to do. I think we're busy leading while Joe Biden is in the basement.
Your candidate is a racist. Your candidate is a racist, and if you want to sit on this TV channel and enable a racism, you go right ahead. Go ahead, you're enabling racism.
And that is the derision.
Enable racism.
The Democrats are trying to tag on Trump.
Enable racism.
Division, not what Trump is doing.
Keep enabling racism, Dan. See how it works out for you, my friend.
You brought up you've brought up what we're hearing a lot of. We're hearing this defund the police over and over again. These calls are growing louder. Democrats here trying to really pump the brakes on this. At this point, Mo, talk about the strategy here and the fine line that Democrats are having to walk with this when it comes to these calls to defund the police.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Aaron. First of all, it's not growing more loudly. The members of Congress, Speaker Pelosi, the Democrats in Congress, worked with some Republicans in Congress. There is a police brutality reform bill that's already, in the House, agreed upon by both sides of the aisle in many cases. It does not involve defunding the police. That is not a stance of the majority of the Democrats. Again, this is a typical Trump supporter, distract and deflect from the fact that all he's done is continue to promote.
That's absolutely not what's going on here. This is a movement.
I wasn't done.
Go ahead.
I didn't hear her call on you. What I was trying to say before I was rudely interrupted was this.
They're trying to have a conversation. I don't appreciate.
No, we're not having a conversation. I'm answering her question, Dan.
Mo, You finish, Dan. I'm going to give you a chance to respond. Mo, you finish. Go ahead.
Thank you. So all I was trying to say was there is reform legislation led by the Democratic Party. It does not include defunding police. Let's not get dramatic and overstate this situation. There are some folks that are very, very riled up. Rightfully so, they're riled up. They're in anguish and in their pain. They're in horrible pain. A lot of us are. This is personal to a lot of us. This racial divide, this systemic racism that Donald Trump continues to deny that exists. And Dan is obviously enabling that and promoting that stance.
I'm going to let Dan, I want you to respond uninterrupted.
Okay. Well, look, what Mo is talking about here is very clearly a case of a sizable portion of the Democrats, maybe it's a minority at this point, but it's certainly growing, that are leading this defund the police movement, which is absolute nonsense. Look, we need law and order in this country. We need property rights to be respected. And at the same time, we need to really sit down with all constituencies, with communities of color, and we need to try to come to sensible solutions that provide a path forward for us. But this defunding the police movement is liberal nonsense that will lead to chaos, and it's being supported by a large amount of Democrats, and centrist Democrats are terrified it's going to cost them the election. So they're trying to minimize it as much as possible. That's what's going on here. So I find it completely laughable that he's talking about the Republicans stoking this, because it's clearly coming from the left, and it's clearly designed to promote chaos and to limit property rights and the enforceability of property rights. And I think that that's not where a majority of the country is. And I think we're going to see the proof in the pudding in November when Pennsylvania and other states tip in the Trump column again.
Speaking of November, I've got about 30 seconds left, but looking ahead, what does the election look like? We saw a lot of problems in Georgia last week, and that was not the only state during the primary. What does November look like? Very quickly.
I think we're going to
go ahead, Dan.
I think we're looking at a very a base turnout election. I think we're going to see high turnout, but I think we're going to see a map very similar to before. I look for Biden to make aggressive efforts in states like Arizona and to Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, but I expect Trump to hold those three states, and I expect Trump to really push in Minnesota and New Mexico this time as well.
Mo Vela, Dan Eberhart, it's going to be interesting to see how the next few months play out. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.